Hello everyone, Marshall here to bring you a very quick overview slash tutorial on Bant Control, one of Legacy's top decks right now. This is a variation of Blue-White Control. Blue-White Control has been around for a long time, for obvious reasons. Pretty strong cards, good control deck overall. Like I said, currently it's leaning into green for mainly these green creatures. Plus, that gives us access to things like Sylvan Library and some other sideboard cards. So, anyway, let's go over the list real quick, and then we'll take a look at some very brief gameplay. This is a deck for you if you like long games of Magic and like interacting with your opponent. And like I said, it's a control deck, so if you prefer that style of play, then this is a good deck for you. However, that said, it usually requires a bit more of experience, or at least some basic understanding. Well, I shouldn't say basic, I should say pretty in-depth knowledge of the format if you want to be successful with it. Because you need to know what your opponent's doing in order to be able to stop them with this deck. So, but anyway, let's go over the list real quick. So we got 9 creatures, all of which are green. Ice Fang Coatl, good cantrip creature, and of course great blocker. Endurance, really good against Delver right now, probably the main reason why we're playing that. And Uro, just a good spell overall, ends games really quickly as well. So, Sylvan Library, power card, draws us extra cards / card filtering for free. It's really good. We're playing the typical suite of cantrip spells. We got 4 Brainstorm, 4 Ponder, and 3 Portent. Portent mainly to help us set up Terminus, but of course Brainstorm helps us do that as well, and occasionally Ponder. Only 5 counter spells, but good ones. We got Force of Will plus a single Force Negation, and there's some extra on the board. Removal, we got Swords of Plowshares, very strong, obviously, and Super Common and White decks. Typical mana base, not much to say. However, I will say this deck leans pretty heavily into green compared to other blue-white variants. So we have 2 Tropical Islands and 2 Forests, which is pretty on the high side, and that helps us cast Endurance and Uro, since Uro is double green when you escape with Uro. Planeswalkers, we got 2 Jace and Narset and Teferi, all of which good against control. Jace is also one of our win conditions. Teferi and Narset are really just good against opposing blue decks since they shut down counter spells and cantrip spells. Alright, down here we have Prismatic Ending, a relatively new spell, just a really great removal spell in 3 color decks, so 3 of those, and of course 3 Terminus to sweep creatures when you need to. Obviously you're going to be using Terminus with, like I said, Portent, Ponder, and Brainstorm. Alright, sideboard, we got Damping Sphere for our Ancient Tomb City Trader decks. Engineer Explosive for things that play lots of permanents, which is a handful of decks, obviously. Containment Priest for mainly any sort of graveyard shenanigans or Green Sun Zenith, Natural Order, that sort of thing. This list plays 3 back to basics, a little on the high side, but good against lands, because this deck struggles a bit against lands, and of course any other greedy mana bases. Carpet of Flowers for any deck that plays islands, obviously. Mainly Delver, though. Counterbalance, probably don't recommend this as a beginner, but it can be pretty potent in the mirror matchup if you know how to use it. Like I said, extra copies of Force of Vigor for artifacts, enchantments, and Veil of Summer for Thoughtseize decks or Storm, that sort of thing. Alright, so let's take a look at a game here. Alright, so for a starting hand, generally we're looking for some sort of business with a cantrip. No more than 3 lands usually. We're only playing 20 lands, so we don't really need a lot of lands, at least to start. Generally, our cantrips will help us do that. I would probably keep this hand in the blind, but honestly, I'm going to mulligan and let's see if we can get a cantrip hand here. So, hey, there we go. There's a Brainstorm. And plenty of other good spells here, so we will keep that. And we'll also just assume our opponent is a dummy and they don't really do anything to stop us. Normally I would look to also play around Wasteland, but if we wanted, for example, to cast this Ice Fang Coatl on turn 2, we'd really need to go get a Tropical Island, but it's not very good without snow-covered lands. But anyway, so I think on the blind I would probably just put this Flooded Strand on play here. If we needed to crack it for Brainstorm, we could, and then we would just pass and see what they do. And then from there, once we get some more information, we can react accordingly. But I think in this case, we drew a forest for a turn, so that's lucky for us. I think we'd probably just go get an island, perhaps, and then fire off this Ice Fang Coatl. And then we also have Force Will backup if we need to counter anything crazy that they might do. We want to avoid using Force of Will unless we absolutely need to. So like I said, we're looking for game-winning spells. Again, that's where experience comes into play. Can't tell you, there's a long list of spells that could potentially be dangerous, but again, you have it if you need it. But cast that Ice Fang Coatl, draws us a card. Ooh, Terminus. We do not ever want Terminus in our hand, basically. So, all right. So next turn, we're gonna untap, draw another card, another Brainstorm. That's good. Now I'm looking for a fetch land here if I can, so I'm not gonna play a land just yet. I think I'm gonna Brainstorm first, so we can put this Terminus back, and like I said, look for a fetch land. Hey, there's some fetch lands. And now if we needed a Terminus, obviously, like I said, we'd want to find a way to set that up on top, but of course we'd have to fetch a white source. But yeah, for now, I'm definitely just going to put back probably one of these lands and Terminus. And then from there, again, just kind of depends on what our opponent's doing. We could leave up counter magic. Like I said, we could maybe go for a prismatic ending on our removal spell if we needed to. Uro, obviously good. All things, all good things that we'd want to do to find a way to lock down the board, get everything under control, and then eventually either close out the game with, like I said, Uro or Jace is usually the other win condition. Usually things like Ice Fang Coatl aren't really enough to lock out the game, but it does happen occasionally. So yeah, that is a Bant control in a nutshell. Like I said, very quick overview, and just like I said, if you needed to take a look at possibly playing this deck among some of the other proxy decks that I have. So yeah, hopefully you found that helpful, and yeah, bye.